I trained my vertical for the last 30 days, and I'm going to share with you guys the results in this video. My name is John Evans. I coach many of the highest jumpers in the world, and I figured it would be interesting for you guys to hear what I've been doing in the last 30 days of my training, as you probably haven't heard from me. Now, I started out at around 184.5 pounds, give or take. Now, this is relatively mediocre for my actual body weight, but the problem was I had a lot of body fat, and I knew that I was a little bit out of shape and that I would need to address this first and foremost. So that said, getting back into training, I started with just 3 days a week, doing sprints on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, no jumping whatsoever, and then getting in the weight room and really focusing on getting my squat up and getting my power clean up. Now, you guys probably noticed that I did get a new setup, and I now have access to a belt squat, as well as a whole new Olympic weightlifting setup, which I will be getting my platform for tomorrow. Now, what you need to keep in mind is I was relatively detrained. So during this period of time, I'm trying to return to my normal strength levels, and I really wasn't jumping much because I was focused on moving into this new house so that I can properly take care of the athletes that will be coming and staying with me in the future, hopefully years to come. So week one, I took some notes. As I said, I weighed 184.7 pounds in a shirt and shorts. I wasn't going to test mostly because I didn't really want to get hurt. I knew if I was going to push testing day one, that might offset the training for the following 29 or 28 days to come. I felt very out of shape, even fat, you could say, a little bit bloated, and super heavy. One of the things that I remember kind of hitting me during this time was the judgment of having to work outside of my house. I just bought this house. I don't know any of the neighbors, and I was a little bit nervous to expose myself to them in kind of a vulnerable way. And had I not bought this house, I probably wouldn't care. But the fact that these are going to be my neighbors for 10 to 20 years to come, I was scared. I was nervous they were going to judge me, and I had to overcome that fear initially, essentially day one of me starting this 30-day goal of getting my vertical back up. As far as health, I felt 100%. I didn't have any muscle injuries. I didn't have any tendon issues. I was super healthy. I essentially had taken the last 2 months to focus on moving in here, and as a result, had no issues, pretty much had a blank slate coming into the beginning of this 30-day period. So after week one, I really quickly started to recomp. I actually got down to 184 pounds, so I lost about half a pound, and I measured this the exact same way every single week, and I actually try to do it the exact same time every single Monday, which is around 1 o'clock for me. So the first week was really about building the habit, and I just tried to make sure that I did the pieces of each workout that really felt important to me. So I knew that I wanted to sprint as a 1-foot jumper. That's really important, and I knew that I had to start building the habit of getting in the weight room. I achieved this goal, and I got 3 of those days done, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but I did not jump, again, because I was focusing on just getting fit. I didn't want to jump while I was so heavy and weak and start to demotivate myself before I even got started. One thing I quickly realized is that I was fairly out of shape in terms of my actual ability to generate force. Force fast, force slow. Across the board, I was really not fit in terms of being an athlete. Maybe I, on paper, was fitter than other people, but compared to what I was capable of, I knew that I shouldn't be pushing the jump sessions too much because I had already developed the skill of jumping, and I really was just trying to retrain back into decent shape. So I estimated roughly 10 to 15 weeks before I would actually have my first dunk session based on where I was after that first week and based on where I wanted to be by the end of this macro cycle. Now remember, a macro cycle is about 6 months. So after the first week, my strength came back very, very, very quickly. The first session I did, I think I just had the yellows on the belt squat, and I did about 10 to 15 reps. By the end of the second week, I had actually hit 225 by 10, was at decent ranges of motion, and I felt like my legs were getting a lot stronger and a lot bigger very, very, very quickly. By the end of week 2, you guys probably saw me sprinting with Isaiah, but I felt way better. I realized that I needed to focus on a push cue instead of rhythm or positions or anything else, but really just focusing on pushing through the ground as hard as I could gave me the greatest amount of sprint performance improvements in that first 2 weeks where I was focusing on getting faster and more explosive. I also dialed in my diet during this time, and as I said, I was recomping during that first 2-week period, gaining a lot of muscle in my legs and also starting to lose a little bit of fat. By the end of the second week, I actually got to the point where I was squatting 225 for 17 reps, whereas in the first week, I had maybe squatted 225 for 10 reps. I had also done 295 for 2 reps in the belt squat. So I had gotten quite a bit stronger in that lift, which was a major goal of mine in returning to training because I had detrained quite a bit. And as an athlete who's trained for 14 years, I did expect that a little bit. My power clean also increased considerably. When I started, I just more or less worked with the greens or the yellows, which is 95 to 115 pounds, again, to make sure I wasn't gonna get hurt and really start to reintroduce those movements. And I got up to doing 185 pounds for a double by the end of the second week. So going into week 3, one of my friends, Satyar, reached out to me and he asked me to sprint on a Sunday, which is actually a day before my training cycle started. But because I wanted to just build the habit again and I was just trying to accumulate training volume, I decided to take him up on it. The downside is that my Achilles got really flared up coming into the Monday session where I was going to run with Isaiah and Lewis. Now, if you guys watch the videos, you probably noticed that on Wednesday, I took it super easy, and that's because my Achilles was in a little bit of pain, and you really don't want to risk that, especially as you get older. So that said, I decided to reduce the sprint volume and focus on more or less just getting really high quality strength work in, both in the power clean and the squat. I actually did almost the exact same session as Isaiah last week, and I was really proud of that. I was able to squat, I think, a red, a blue, and whites, which is around 245 pounds on the belt squat for about 4 sets of 7, the last 2 sets being those working weight reps. Coming into this third week, I was quite a bit heavier, which I was surprised about. I actually got up to 187 pounds, and the reason for that, I'm probably storing a lot of carbohydrates as a result of training really, really hard, depleting those carbohydrate stores, consuming a lot of carbohydrates and thus water, along with the fact that I'm probably gaining muscle mass very quickly because I was very detrained, and it's much easier to retrain when you already are in a detrained state. So I did feel a bit leaner, but I also felt really heavy because of this, and that was a little bit of my insecurity in this third week. Now, week 4, I actually dunked on that Monday session, which was yesterday. Now, I came into this expecting it to be quite bad, and the reason why is because I wasn't able to sprint towards the end of that week 3 and wanted to deal with that flare-up. And then I was also a little bit nervous about my body weight. I was coming in at around 180 pounds, which felt super heavy for me. And even though I understood that it was probably muscle mass, I still felt like it was going to be a big deterrent for me as a 1-foot jumper. That said, to my pleasant surprise, on 9'10 and a half, 9'10 and 3/4, I actually jumped fairly decently. I was back to trying dunks that I was trying on 9'7 the year prior, and I was actually trying new things. Now, I didn't necessarily have any hard dunks or anything like that, but for me to jump my highest, they need a lot of space. So I was really experimenting with taking more steps, using more speed than I had ever used, and trying to find a way to implement lobs that felt more comfortable for me. All said and done, I think my vertical probably went up about 3 inches. There's no way to tell, but I definitely don't think I would have been dunking at all in any frame or been able to stay healthy at the beginning, to coming out of this very healthy, able to dunk on 9'10 and a half, and really attempting some of my hardest dunks, like a 180 cuff windmill on 9'10 and a half, and also a self-bounced 1 or 2-hander, which will be my goal after the second month of training. That said, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will talk to you guys in the following 30-day segment. So wish me luck, and I'll talk to you guys then.